So the way this is going to work is that the candidates will both get an opening statement. They have 2 minutes to do that. We have a timekeeper. She's going to keep them on track there. And then after that, audience members are going to be able to ask a question. We've got these Phil Donahue microphones here. We're going to pass these around, and the deal is that you can ask a question, and the candidates will take turns answering them. Each candidate will get to go first, alternating. They both get 2 minutes to answer the question, and there's not going to be any comments from the audience. We're just going to have the person speak with the microphone. They're going to ask the question, and then it's going to turn right over to the candidate. So it's going to be, it's not going to be a community dialogue in that respect, one person at a time. I'm going to do my best to kind of see who's got their hand up, and we'll get you a microphone. If it gets kind of crazy and we got too many people wanting questions, we might do a little bit of a lineup over here. So we're just going to go on the fly like that. If you would like to ask a question, but you're feeling nervous about these microphones, there's paper right over there, and you can write your question on that. Somebody will bring it over to me, and then I'll ask the question. If you didn't feel like you got your question answered, we can check with the candidates and see if they could clarify that as well. Do take note that this is going to be on the Port Townsend television, probably in about a week or so. And then also, if you go to Dennis Daneau, D-E-N-N-I-S, Daneau, D-A-N-E-A-U, go to his YouTube channel, and this is going to be up on there as well. So you can pass that on to your friends who weren't able to make it, and you can read about it in the paper. All right, great. So we have the PD, we have the Peninsula Daily News here. Is anybody here from the Leader? All right. So, because Nole comes before Stanko in the alphabet, I'm going to ask Mr. Nole to start out with his opening.
Well, good evening, everybody, and thank you for coming tonight and taking the time out of your, whatever it was you were going to be doing, to come participate in some, what I consider some, like, American history, kind of, coming out and seeing some political forums. My name's Joe Nole, and I'm running for the office of Jefferson County Sheriff. I've been involved in law enforcement for the past 35 years in Jefferson County. I started out as a backcountry ranger with the Forest Service, working out of the Quilcene Ranger District in the Buckhorn Wilderness. And after that, I was hired on with the Sheriff's Office. I've been there for the last 28 years, where I'm currently employed as a detective. I've lived during the time I've been with the Sheriff's Office, I've held the positions of patrol deputy, detective, chief criminal deputy, appointed sheriff, and undersheriff. I've lived in the county for 33 years. My wife and I have been married 40 years, and I have 3 daughters that were raised in the county. They all attended the local Chimacum schools. We need change in the Sheriff's Office. We need new leadership. We need a leader that will work on training and get us the training we need to do the job we have to do. We need to get training in, we need to finish our Blue Courage training, get training in de-escalation, and also domestic violence and sexual assault crimes. We also need to work on the low morale that we have. I've never seen the morale so low at the Sheriff's Office. There's a lot of deputies here tonight. Anyone that's been following social media or anything else knows that things aren't going well. We need a leader that can set out the expectations, give the training and the tools to get the job done, and lead by example. That's something that we're lacking at the Sheriff's Office right now. We also need to bring back some fiscal responsibility. We've wasted a lot of money at the Sheriff's Office. We got a grant, or we got appropriation for $84,000 to buy some car cams. That never happened. And we've had the most lawsuits that we've ever had in the history of the Sheriff's Office and Jefferson County. Thank you.
I see a lot of friendly faces out there. Are they all friendly? I hope so. I am your sheriff. I've been your sheriff for 4 years. And we're going to just get to it. I ran on a platform of assessment, change, and community. And I made that happen. I've been a reformer at the Sheriff's Office. The first thing I did, which I promised, is I was elected to put the Sheriff's Office in order, and I've done exactly that. My assessors came in and said that we had a bunch of hardworking deputies. I agree with that. Our deputies work very, very hard. what we had management dysfunction and neglect for at least the last several years. And my opponent, who I demoted, is not a manager. He was demoted because he cannot multitask, he cannot stay organized, he cannot complete tasks. In fact, his evaluations going back 10 years are available through public records. And we have continued to move forward with forward-thinking modern police tendencies. We have a strategic plan that was put together by not me, but the community and our employees. And we meet every 6 months and update that plan. We have an assessment plan that is through the Washington Association of Sheriffs and Police Chiefs called WASPIC, that is the best practice standards to keep police departments and sheriff's offices, nationwide actually, out of lawsuits and liability. We just in fact passed the first state audit in the last 2 sheriffs. And if we didn't have our evidence room inventoried, it hadn't been inventoried in 20 years, we wouldn't have passed that audit. Our evidence room is now inventoried and it has been passed the state audit time up. I'm sorry, I can't continue, but that's okay. Thank you very much.
I have a real quick yes/no question. Have you ever been in a situation where either of you, either on your own or at the direction of your superiors, you knowingly did not enforce the law?
And we're going to have Mr. Stanko start off.
Never.
I'm not sure that can just be answered with a yes or no question.
I think it can.
Well, I don't.
Well,
Law enforcement, as our job as law enforcement, we have the discretion on what we can do. And there have been times where I haven't enforced the law because I have the discretion. And the law could be something like pulling someone over for speeding and you decide to give them a warning. I didn't enforce the law in that case. So yes, there has been times that I haven't enforced the law.
as law enforcement officers, what is your perspective on enforcing the 2009 court ruling regarding third-party training at Fort Discovery?
I'm very familiar with the 2009 court ruling on Fort Discovery. I was given that to investigate when it first came across the sheriff's desk. And it's just that. It's a civil ruling. It has nothing in it that we are allowed or told to arrest someone or shut someone down. That's something that comes from the planning department, not the sheriff's office. The sheriff did an investigation into that against my warning, saying that this was something civil. The sheriff's office doesn't need to be involved in this. He went ahead and did it anyway, and that's an example of one of the lawsuits that we're in now. So we don't enforce civil law at the sheriff's office. We enforce RCW, the Revised Code of Washington, and Washington Administrative Code, the WAC. So yeah, my take on that is we don't enforce civil law, and that was a mistake to go in there and mess around with something that was not our problem. If it would have went back to a judge and it was determined that yeah, he's in violation of a court order and he is in contempt of court, that would be something else. And even that, it would have to go to a very big extreme before the sheriff's office took time to go down there and deal with that. That would be something where lawyers would go to court and argue that. So yeah, we shouldn't be touching that with a 10-foot pole.
Well, the reason I have an opponent is I keep people accountable and responsible. I do the management responsibility what's best for the county, and I disagree 100% with Mr. Nole. The case against the Fort Discovery went all the way up to the appellate court. It came all the way down as a ruling against third-party training. I was made aware of this by the Discovery Bay Alliance, a bunch of people that were not happy with the noise and the helicopters and the military training that was going on in Discovery Bay. And I can enforce the codes. We need more code enforcement, in fact, in the county. When I'm reelected, that's going to be one of the pushes that I'm going to make, is for more code enforcement. So for my opponent to paint me as doing something that's illegal is unconscionable. It's not right. What I did was appropriate, proper, and in the best interest of the county and our citizens.
First, I would like Mr. Stanko to speak louder. I can't hear. I have a hearing problem. I hear Noel fine, but I can't hear you well enough. But my question is to Mr. Stanko, could you describe what community policing is and how it's different from the traditional concept of policing and what it means for this community here as you see it?
Can you hear me now with this? Is that high enough? Is everybody awake now? Okay, we'll do that. I've been involved in community policing since the mid-'80s down in Southern California. In fact, I ran the first immigrant-friendly community policing center and foot patrol center in Fullerton, California, under the old broken windows theory. If you're all familiar with that, from many decades ago, is that how do you clean up a community and how do you reduce fear in the community? And well, that's by cleaning up the community, fixing the windows, picking the trash up, et cetera, et cetera. Hence the foot patrols. And then how do you reduce fear with the immigrant community? You have them come on in and you help them find out about Social Security, find out about benefits without fear or favor of any arrests from that perspective. Also, I'm a big believer in President Obama's 21st century policing, former President Obama's 21st century policing. He basically had 6 pillars. He brought police executives together from around the nation, including our own Sue Rohr, who's our academy director. And she basically says she's trying to train deputies and police officers. They have the courage and tenacity of a warrior, but the heart and mind of a guardian and protector. We are not an occupying force here. We are community engaged. Our police officers are now driving black and whites, our deputies are. And the purpose for that is to be visible in the community. We're not stealth. We're not, again, an occupying force. 98% of what police officers do is what we're doing right now. Communication, de-escalation techniques, being able to be problem solvers. They carry guns, we carry extra bullets, we carry other things. That's only for 2% of the deputies. I know that. I've been involved in 3 shootings in my career. I have picked up a dead partner. I don't want to ever do that again. I've had a mother standing next to me with her little child with tears because the partner was killed. How do I answer that? Okay? And another thing too is I've had people try to kill me. I've shot people, and it's not pleasant to do that. I'd rather not have to do that. So again, 98% of what our job is to talk and to de-escalate situations. Thank you for the opportunity.
Well, in my mind, community policing is something that I've done ever since I got hired at the sheriff's office back in 1990. It's dealing with the community that we live in. We know everybody. You know, everybody here lives in this community. How many times do you see your neighbor at the store? You know, we see the same thing. We have to go to the same store where someone maybe I arrested last week. I see them at the store the next week, and we're standing in line together. And when they say, "Hey, Joe, sorry I was such a butthead the other night. That really was a wake-up call I needed." That's community policing. It's doing the right thing for the right reason. It's treating other people how you want to be treated. It's when people call on the telephone and want a deputy to come to their house. It's not leaving them a voicemail or something else. It's following up when a house gets burglarized and they want to know what's happened. They don't have to be called back 2 weeks later to find out what happened. That's community policing. It's more than just having coffee with a cop one time every 3 or 4 years. It's just treating other people how you want to be treated. It's also, you know, that my opponent here talks about, you know, shooting and being involved in shootings, and that's like a badge of honor or something. You know, I've never been involved in any shootings. I haven't shot at anybody, but I have and he got a Medal of Valor award, I think, for shooting at someone. I have a life-saving award for saving someone's life that had a heart attack in the sheriff's office, and I'm proud to say that. And in our community like this, that's what we need to do. We need to keep working towards keeping it a place like that where we all still know each other, we all can get along, and you know the deputies and the police department are there for the people that live in the county, the people that pay our wages, and that's what community policing is about.
For both of the candidates, I'm interested in your views on the best way to handle a subordinate who chooses not to follow direction.
Well, that's something that we learn in supervisor school. And the best way to handle a subordinate that doesn't choose to follow direction is, first of all, you got to set clear direction. You got to say, this is what I want you to do, and this is what needs to be done. And then you set a timeline, and I want this done by this date and time. If they don't do it, you talk to them, you make maybe a note of that, and put it in a file, and then you tell them, don't do that anymore. And then it goes on, they do it again. You talk to them again. This time they get an official written official write-up. They get disciplined. They choose not to do it again. Next time, same thing again. You give them some days off. It's called progressive discipline, and that's how we deal with things that when subordinates don't do what they're supposed to do. And thank goodness at our office we have a lot of good deputies and employees that's a rare occurrence.
The job of a sheriff is to set direction. The job of a sheriff is to deal with the budget. The job of the sheriff is to be sure that the employees are doing the right thing. In my 4 years here, I have had to demote people, including my opponent here. I have had to discipline people, and I have had to fire people. Everything was with cause. No decisions were ever made in a vacuum. My opponent just painted the picture as to why he was demoted. I gave him every opportunity to be successful, and he wasn't successful. Now, I want you to know my opponent is a really nice guy, and he's a good employee, but he's not a manager. And what he painted for you is exactly right. That's textbook of what you're supposed to do in that. But when you fire people, when you have to demote people, when you have to discipline people, it's not easy. It's some of the hardest decisions you have to make. And you always have people in the audience, the other employees, that don't understand the whole picture of what you have to do. But I'm telling you, making the tough decision is not easy. You have to have a backbone to be able to do that, and I do.
This is kind of a follow-up to what the earlier question here, and what exactly just came out of Detective Nole's mouth about insubordination. I'm actually kind of curious. One could characterize what he just described as insubordinate behavior, but at the Quilcene Forum, there were some interesting things said by you. Sorry, I'd almost rather come over here to that mic. When we were talking about performance evaluations, you said that you weren't getting done the things that the sheriff wanted you to get done. You weren't doing this, you weren't doing that. I wasn't devoting my whole self because you didn't want to go that way. And then you actually said, it got to the point where I thought if I ever had a desire to run for political office, we were going to have to cut our ties, because being associated with the sheriff, I thought was going to put me or paint me in a light that we thought the same way, things like that. So my question for you actually is more, is that insubordination, or were you actually undermining the sheriff?
And this is actually Mr. Stanko's turn to go first, so go ahead and comment as you like. And also, it's most helpful if the questions are sort of directed at both candidates, give both candidates a chance to answer the question that you have.
The question was directed at Mr. Nole, but I'll answer it from my sheriff perspective. When I have a person that I give direction to, my expectation is that that direction is carried out. And I believe that at the current time, I'll answer it this way, I have an excellent management team. I have an outstanding undersheriff. I have an outstanding chief civil deputy. I have an outstanding jail commander and an outstanding office manager. We meet on usually a weekly basis. I'm informed about whatever is going on, and we talk about things that need to be done and haven't been done. And if they haven't been done, they are carried out in a timeline that we both mutually agree upon. And with Mr. Nole, that wasn't done. And that's the reason that he no longer is number 2, and that's the reason he is a detective. And I'll let Mr. Nole answer the question from your perspective there, sir.
Before I answer that question, I'd like to touch on what was asked last time, the last question, and there was some talk about all the demotions and disciplining that he's done and all the firings. He demoted me, and he took 2 captains and made them be sergeants for the sake of the chain of command. So those are all his demotions he's made. He's disciplined 2 people in the 4 years he's been there, at least on the patrol side. And one of them went for almost a year and resulted in, I believe, a lawsuit over public records request that was paid out. And the other one was also part of another lawsuit, but that's another story. So, the only people he's fired has been people that he's hired. So it's not like he came in and got rid of all these people at the sheriff's office that were all bad. So anyway, I just want to be clear on that. He paints this picture how he's a change agent that comes in and gets rid of all these people and disciplines everybody. Not true. As far as insubordination, insubordination, I don't know if you know what the definition of insubordination is, but insubordination is when you're given an order by a superior officer and you fail to carry that out. I never felt I was given an order by the sheriff to do things. He asked me things that he wanted me to do. But I would say that it was borderline insubordination. And you're exactly right what you said. That he was asking me to do things that I didn't believe in, that I didn't think we were doing was right, and I drug my feet and I didn't do those things. I was hoping that there was some way I could stay in there as the undersheriff and still have some control over what was happening in the sheriff's office. And it got to the point where he demoted me, and then he blames it on evaluations and other things. The evaluation he demoted me on was one he wrote himself. One thing we don't have on my opponent are his evaluations. You know, if anyone's wondered, they were all destroyed when he left California. So we can't look back and see how that all goes. We do have some, community type evaluations about what's going on. So anyway, hope that answered your question.
We've got a question right here with a white shirt on.
Oh, Kit Kittredge from Quilcene, former firefighter EMT. One of my questions is, what kind of presence would the department have in South County? We used to have a deputy down there, and that hasn't happened for a while. I'd like to hear that piece. And the other is, what is your interface? What is your intended interface with ICE, Homeland Security, and other federal entities who wish to operate in our county? Thank you.
I think those are really two questions, and they could both be talked to for a couple of minutes on each one easily. As far as the South County goes, my plan is to have deputies down there. I plan to have when deputies are on duty, they're going to make a run through the South County at least. We used to do that when I was on the road. We have gotten more busy and things, but that is going to be one of my focuses, is to get more patrol presence down in the South County, and including Brennan and Quilcene. I'd also like to do a little more getting involved on the West End with some of the stuff out there. As far as, I don't quite remember your whole question on ICE and the Border Patrol and all that stuff, but
How do you choose to interface with?
I would not choose to interface with them.
And with funding as well.
I would respond to, if they had someone that there was an emergency going on, one of their officers needed help, we would respond to that. But as far as going out of our way to try to find undocumented immigrants, we will not be doing that. We will, there's been questions about ICE detainers and things like that. I would not honor an ICE detainer. I will honor any warrant for someone's arrest, regardless of their nationality, creed, color, religion, whatever you want to say. But I'm not going to go after people just because they're in our country illegally. That's federal law. Go ahead.
The other part is just like the funding. I know in Homeland Security there's federal funding, and then you are obliged to.
Yes, we get a grant. We get the Operation Stone Garden grant right now, and that we get money every year. We were getting like $68,000 a year, and half of that goes to pay overtime. The other half goes to buy equipment that has to be used to assist Border Patrol in their mission. And that's what the Stone Garden grant is. It's to assist the Border Patrol in their mission. And our deputies go out on patrols. Before they go out on patrol, they call the Border Patrol and say they're going out. The Border Patrol decides where we can patrol. The deputies have a list they fill out of everyone they talk to, and that information all goes to the Border Patrol, and they put it in their database to decide what they're going to do.
Assisting Border Patrol.
Right now we are, yes.
South County is very important to me, and when we have enough deputies on duty, we have a deputy down in South County on a regular basis. There are some months where we have deputies down south 5 or 6 times a month. Other times we don't because of staffing, as an example. We usually have 2 or 3 deputies on duty at any given time, and my goal from a sheriff's perspective is to send people home safe at night. But you're exactly right. We need deputies in the South County. And I had a staffing study done early on when I was at the sheriff's office, done by WSU. And staffing study said we need 7 more deputies by 2020 in order to complement the proper staffing to staff South County. And I've asked for deputies in 2016, 2017, and 2018, and I got money for half a deputy this year, which we're trying to fill. And on the west end, we have great coverage on the west end now. We had spotty coverage on the west end before I came there, and we're able to locate 2 local, happen to be men out there, to patrol the west end, including the Ho Indian tribe that we have. We also have from a South County perspective, you have representation on my Citizen Advisory Committee. We have representation from Coyle, from Quilcene, and from Brennan. And then from all the way up Brennan, and then Cape George, and Calla Point, and Port Townsend, and so forth. So we have communication with you down there to see what is going on. George Sickle and I are in communication all the time down there. He's the self-appointed mayor of Brennan, so if that does any good from that perspective. Regarding the ICE, we have no relationship, none, with ICE. The Jefferson County Sheriff's Office does not participate in Title VIII U.S. immigration law, period. There are 2 FEMA grants in the county. The first FEMA grant is with DEM, Department of Emergency Management. That takes care of the disasters, hurricanes, floods. The other one is a FEMA grant, Federal Emergency Management Association, managed by Homeland Security, and Homeland Security has the local Border Patrol folks fill out the paperwork for it. Every single time a police officer or a deputy stops anybody in this room, that information is public record, available to anybody who asks for it, period. That information is public record. We don't have a relationship with ICE. We never have.
Time's up.
And Mr.
No.
And Mr. Stanko, you have the microphone still, and there's a question that was handed up, slightly related. Will you pledge to end the Stone Garden contract? And if you would briefly just explain what that is for people who don't know.
Okay, I will not end the Stone Garden grant. I think it's wonderful. I think it assists us. It does not supplant the deputies. It adds additional deputies on the road for South County Patrol, as an example. We just met with the FEMA people. It is for patrolling our marinas and our airports for identifying drug trafficking, human trafficking, and terror trafficking. That's what the grant is for. No, I will not get rid of the Stone Garden grant. It doesn't supplant anything. It enhances our patrols out there. If I have 3 deputies on duty and a deputy wants to work overtime, that's another deputy, another eyes and ears out there. I think it's a wonderful program. And I will continue that program because I think it benefits the community, and I think it is a great partnership with Homeland Security.
Well, once again, my opponent's not being straight up with what Operation Stone Garden Grant is. I was instructed by him when I was the undersheriff to apply for the grant with Stone Garden. So I applied for the grant. I was sent to grant school to learn how to do those kinds of things. And so I know the grant inside and out. And I actually applied for it 3 different times, 3 years in a row. And the Stone Garden grant, and it says right in it, is to assist the Border Patrol in their mission. And I don't know if there's anyone in here, there might be a few that don't know what the Border Patrol's mission is. All you have to do is turn on the TV, open the newspaper, look in a magazine. You can see what the Border Patrol's mission is. And we're assisting them with that. It is true that we get another deputy on the road that they pay for 8 hours a few times a month to patrol areas that the Border Patrol picks out. And that is a good thing. And we get some equipment. The equipment has to be used for assisting Border Patrol with what they think needs to be done. So I don't agree with it. I don't think it's right. I don't know what to do about the problem, if you want to say, with immigration and undocumented immigrants, but I don't believe this is right. If you think back to the days when the Border Patrol first came here and we had the buses that were being pulled over down at Discovery Bay and the Border Patrol was boarding them and checking people's ID and seeing who they are, and they were doing roadblocks out on Highway 104 and checking all the cars that went by and doing that, the citizens of this county, a lot of them went into a rage, and that was stopped. So then they had to think, well, how can we get those names still? Well, how about we offer money to the local police departments, and they can go out and get the names for us, and then they can give them to us. And that's exactly what we do. We go out, the people that are stopped, regardless of who you are, we get the names, the date of birth, the address, the vehicle license numbers, all those things. They get put into a database for the Border Patrol, and then they use those at their will to do what they want. One thing we haven't had happen yet is someone be caught that's an undocumented immigrant, and when that does happen, you'll see a different thing.
And we'll do another question, but if you want to use...
Excuse me, when somebody calls me a liar, I need to respond.
Okay.
Please.
What we'll do is we'll get another question, and then you can use some of your time on
Thank
that
you.
question
I
to
appreciate
respond.
that.
I think we have one in the back. You've been patient.
I'd like to talk a little more about, you to talk a little more about accepting funds from the things related to Patriot Act, ICE. I know that a lot of local police get equipment, kind of military style things. To me, the militarization of the police does not seem to go with community policing, as you've both described. I wonder if you can speak to your feelings and intent, your intent on accepting funds for military-style equipment and also the ICE funding going forward.
Okay. First of all, the ICE funding, the FEMA funding, whatever you want to call it, it comes from FEMA, goes down to Homeland Security, and then it goes to the Border Patrol, who manages it. When I'm elected, I will do away with the Stone Garden grant. That's not something that we're going to participate in. I don't believe in it, and I don't think we need it. As far as militarization, I don't think we really have a need for that kind of equipment. We don't have any right now. And the only thing I did, well, I'm not even going to get into that. But yeah, I don't see a need for it. We're not at war with the community. Yeah. Does that answer your question? Okay.
Mr. Stanko.
What Mr. Nole did here is what is the antithesis of community policing. He's increasing the fear in the community. We have not had any arrests in immigration since 2004. No ICE detainers, period. Never will, never have under my regime, number one. In the antithesis of community policing's lifeblood is reduction of fear. And it offends me when I am told that I am involved in something that will increase the fear. It absolutely will not. The FEMA grant is a grant that enhances our border protection. And I will always work with our federal partners. As a sheriff, you have to work with your federal partners, your state partners, your county partners. I will always enforce the county codes. I will always enforce the state laws. And I will always enforce the federal laws. That's why you elect me. And that's what I plan to do. I cannot arbitrarily decide not to enforce a code. I cannot arbitrarily decide not to enforce a policy. Our policies have been written to be enforced. When I got there, it was indiscriminate. It was spotty. They're now up to date, and we enforce our policies, we enforce our codes. My job is accountability and responsibility. The people that are not happy with me are the people that I've held accountable and responsible for doing their jobs. My job is not to be their friend. My job is to get the job done for you. It's your dollar and it's your time. My job is to be sure that they are on the road, getting out of their police cars, walking into your businesses, walking into your communities, driving around your communities in their black and white cars, not their stealth police cars. And when I'm reelected, that'll continue. If you don't want that, don't elect me. But I want to be elected. I will continue with the community policing model. Thank you.
My name's Bob Gibo. I've been involved in law enforcement for about 45 years. I've known both these guys for a long time, Joe a lot longer than I've known the sheriff. The question I have is, I've heard through this election process, you heard it tonight, that somehow or other the evidence room for the sheriff's office hadn't been audited or inventoried for many years. Even though the sheriff's office had a policy that was supposed to happen, state law says that was supposed to happen, but it hadn't happened. Evidence room management is one of the things that are listed by WASPIC, the Washington Association of Sheriffs and Chiefs of Police. They list 12 things that can get police agencies in trouble, and mismanagement of evidence is one of them. So my question to both of you guys, how could that have happened? And what can you do in the future to keep something like that from happening again?
Mr. Stanko.
First of all, I want to say that you can't go it alone. That's part of the dirty dozen that Bob here talks about too. It's called the dirty dozen, 12 things to get cops and Sheriff's Office is in trouble, you can't go it alone. I've heard Mr. Nole say several times, I can do it myself. I can do a strategic plan. I can do accreditation. Where's I in team? Where's I in getting things done by an efficient, effective manner? It's not. Mr. Nole was in charge of the evidence room. It wasn't inventoried in numerous years. Now we have it inventoried. If we would have had the audit during Mr. Nole's time, we would have failed the audit. But we passed our first state audit that happened to come down the pike. It's indiscriminate with sheriff's offices. And I was very proud of all of our employees that helped make that happen. But it's a team effort. You can't do anything yourself. I wouldn't be able to do that. I have the most employees. I have 50 employees. I have a $6 million budget. I have to trust my manager in the civil division. I have to trust my undersheriff. I have to trust my jail superintendent, my office manager, and manage it. I set the direction. And part of that direction is getting things done properly. And when I took over, the evidence room had not been inventoried. In fact, I walked in the evidence room and talked to the evidence clerk and said, hi there, I'm your new sheriff. I'd like to see a copy of our evidence room policy. She said, Sheriff, we have no policy. Now, there was a policy. She just didn't know about it. That's not effective. That's not efficient. And I have made changes to correct that, and I promise you that your sheriff's office will be run effectively, responsibly, for the next 4 years while I'm there. Thank you.
Okay. I thought I heard the number 20 years thrown around, that the evidence room hadn't been audited in 20 years. Well, my opponent's been saying that, and I actually looked into it and contacted some of the previous sheriffs and evidence officers that worked in there. And there were numerous audits of the evidence room, or inventories of the evidence room. And every year they were audited by the state and passed every year. I don't know where he got the 20-year thing, or that this hadn't happened in so long, but the evidence room is kind of like a sacred thing at a law enforcement agency. That's where the things go that are going to be used for court or going to be held for someone in a secure place. I've heard things from the other side about that you could walk in and out of the evidence room, that anyone could go take anything they want. That is so far from the truth. There's only 2 people that can get in the evidence room, and it's secure. And it's always been a priority. And believe it or not, I got hired in I started working in 1990 for the sheriff's office. I wasn't in charge of the evidence room for 28 years. And sometimes that's presented that I've been in charge of this thing the whole time. As far as I know, in my 28 years there, we have never had a case that's been thrown out of court or something like that due to a missing piece of evidence. I don't know of any missing pieces of evidence, and the evidence room has been good. Could we do better? Of course, we could do better. And when we started looking into accreditation, which I totally support, I was excited that we were going to finally get on board and do things in a more modern fashion. This was things that wasn't done years ago, 20 years ago, 25 years ago. So it was a good thing. And we tried my opponent tried to do an inventory of the evidence room. It fell through. It was through me as the undersheriff and the detectives that actually did the inventory, and we ordered equipment to do it and do it right the first time, and now it's in good shape.
And this one goes to you, Mr. Nole, first. What will you do to end the ridiculous rates for inmates to call their friends and families? These rates make it increasingly difficult for them to stay in touch with those who will try and help them when they get out.
I don't know a whole lot about that. I don't know how that all works. In the early days, it used to work that if you were in jail and you want to make a phone call to a family member or a friend or something, you would each cell had a phone in it, and you would do a collect call. And the call would come home. People here probably remember, some of us remember collect calls. You'd answer the phone, it'd say you have a call from so-and-so, we accept the charges, and you'd say yes. Well, as time has gone on, nowadays it's pretty much common practice that all phone calls in the jail are recorded. And so you have to have equipment to record it, you have to have places to store it, and I don't know exactly how that all works, but my thought is that, and I've heard that it costs a lot of money, that the inmates are probably paying for all the equipment and all the everything that goes into making those calls happen. So I don't know a whole lot about that. I would certainly look into it and make sure that it's fair and that it isn't a burden on people to to not be able to contact their loved ones or whoever. But I don't know enough about how that all works. But I would, certainly look into it. And is there a cheaper way to do it? I think that recording the phone calls is a good thing. It definitely assists with cases and stuff. So and officer safety, because sometimes we hear things that may be being planned. So, but maybe there's a cheaper way to do it.
In Joe's defense, he's not involved with the jail side. I am. He is partially correct on that. I believe our rate's about 33 cents a minute for a phone call. And Joe is right. We're mandated to have the phone calls recorded. And the money that we make on the phone calls goes to pay for the anger management. It goes to pay for some of the inmate services that we have. It's not like the old days when we can feed them peanut butter and jelly sandwiches and stick a phone in there so they can make their phone calls. I wish it was. But David Fortino, our jail superintendent, is more than happy to talk to anybody regarding how and why and where we do that. He has actually looked into different services, and right now we've got the best going for the most effective and efficient and most beneficial for the inmates. We just have a brand new camera system in there too. We have to record everything except in private areas like the toilets and the showers. And there are a lot of costs that come into taking care of our clients and our souls that are in custody. We're averaging over 51 men and women in custody at any given time now. And the majority of them have a mental health and a substance abuse problem, which we're also dealing with Suboxone and naloxone and so forth. So yes, we're on top of it. We're trying to do the best for the county, for the inmates, and it is an expensive endeavor.
And just the last question here was written up. How would you change the morale in the office if you think that it does need changed?
Thanks for the question. And again, thank you all for allowing us to participate in the democratic process here in the wonderful United States of America in Jefferson County. This is my second time around, and I've enjoyed it most of the time, I think. But morale, from my standpoint, is intuitive. A lot of people make their own morale. If I disciplined you, if I demoted you, if I fired you, I wouldn't expect your morale to be that high. Again, I have an excellent staff. I have an undersheriff that does an excellent job. I have a jail superintendent that has 21 folks under him. The jail superintendent has about 22 to 24 under him. My chief civil deputy and my office manager, we meet on a weekly basis when we can, and we talk about things. We talk about personnel matters. We talk about issues that impact employees. We talk about vacations. We talk about the best way to deal with employees. I mean, this is what we do, and this is how we have to operate. Again, I go back to my statement I said earlier. My staff has instructed to keep my deputies and my employees accountable and responsible, paying attention to their personal and their family needs. Family is number one. One of our deputies just had his father diagnosed with cancer. Absolutely, I'd let him go, at the chagrin to the undersheriff, because now we have to fill that slot. But family's number one. But no, we're not their friend. But we have to do the job for you. And sometimes it's not an easy job to do. Thanks again for your time. I appreciate it. And Joe, you're up.
Well, there is definitely a problem with morale at the sheriff's office. I talked about that earlier. It was one of the many points. We don't have time here to talk about all of them. But we really need some direction. We do have a strategic plan, paid tens of thousands of dollars for it. I think if you ask any deputies what's in there, they're going to say they don't know. I've talked to the deputies. I'm supported by the deputies. They say they don't know where they're at. They don't know where they're going. And as a job as a deputy, you can kind of just, I don't want to say float out there. The deputies are doing a really good job, but you don't even have to come to work. You sign in from your house in your car, and you can go patrol all day and go home. If you have some reports to do, you got to come in and write them up. And a lot of the guys do that. They don't even want to come to the office. But they need to have direction. They need to have expectations. And again, the training and the tools to carry out those expectations. And they need to have someone that listens to their concerns and someone that communicates back to them what's going on. And that is just one part of something that can be changed. They need a leader that leads by example, the leader that's out there doing things that they wouldn't, my idea of that is I wouldn't expect my deputies to do anything I wouldn't do. Doesn't mean I might go run out and the first person up to a house where a gun's shooting out of it, because maybe I'm not the best person to do that, but we have people that are trained for that. And, but I wouldn't certainly expect them to do anything I wouldn't do. And I think that goes a long way. We need to have a leader that we look up to, that we trust, someone that we respect. And I think that, I know that's been lost with the current administration. Thank you.
And Mr. Stanko, I know you already said some thank yous, but we did have 2 minutes planned for closings. Mr. Nole went first on the opening, so I wanted to give you the chance to go first on the closings, if there's any final remarks you'd like to say.
This is a critical job in the county. This is not a personality contest. This is the job that we have to keep people accountable and responsible. It's the business of policing. Every commitment I made 4 years ago, I have kept. Every commitment I made 4 years ago, I have kept. At the cost, not to the my general fund budget, but at the cost to the risk pool. The assessments that I talk about for the corrections side and for the law enforcement side, for the law enforcement side, and the policy I talked about, best practice policy, was paid for by the risk pool, the county risk pool. They think it's that important to pay for it. It's not sexy, but it sure keeps me out of trouble. It sure keeps deputies out of trouble. It sure keeps the county out of trouble. The Citizen Advisory Board was endorsed by resolution by all the county commissioners. The strategic plan did cost $20,000, but I reviewed it with the county commissioners. I reviewed it with the county administrator. None of my decisions have been made in a vacuum. This is a professional business. You just can't arbitrarily give money away. We have a bottom line budget. We have a $6 million budget. Every single penny has to be accounted for. We do that. We have a promising future. We have ALICE training for all the schools now and for all the businesses. Alert, lockdown, I forgot what all the acronym means, so don't fail me on that. But anyway, it's the ALICE training. And we have several deputies that have done that, and they're giving the training to the schools now and to the businesses. We have, we're continuing our assessment. We're continuing our strategic plan. We need to have continuum of care in mental health and drug care in the jail facility for 51 souls. Recidivism is not, is important to reduce.
And you'll notice the time's up. Last
Well, I'm
comment.
sorry you could have thrown something at me. I apologize for that. Thank you again for your time.
Well, if you haven't figured it out by now, life is a strange thing, and you never know where you may end up. I would never be in my mind, I could never believe that I'd be standing here in Port Ludlow, Washington, in a forum to be the Sheriff of Jefferson County. I would never planned that, never even thought I'd be a cop. But, I started out as a backcountry ranger. I was a high school biology teacher for a couple of years. And the things that I did in those professions taught me a lot about how to be a good officer. And I'm really glad that that's happened. I've worked alongside the last 4 sheriffs of Jefferson County. I learned what to do, good things to do from them and bad things to do that I wouldn't do from them. And I think that's just how it goes, that we learn things from people, what to do and what not to do. I have the endorsement of the 5 previous Jefferson County sheriffs. They trust me that I know what I'm doing, that I can bring up the morale, that I can lead this department in the right direction. I also have the endorsement of the East Jefferson, or let me start, the Teamsters 589 that represents the Jefferson County Sheriff's deputies. They represent the Port Townsend Police Department and the JEFCOM 911. I have the endorsement of East Jefferson Fire and Rescue, which represents the firefighters in East Jefferson County and in Brennan. Yesterday I just got the endorsement of the Port Ludlow Fire Department. I have the endorsement of the 24th Legislative District Democrats, and I have the endorsement of the Jefferson County Democrats. And I can assure you those are not people that were demoted or disciplined. Those are people that know that we need to go in a new direction and we need changes at the sheriff's office. My 35 years in law enforcement in Jefferson County have I believe prepared me to take this next step, and I look forward to becoming your next sheriff, and I'd appreciate your vote in November. Thank you.
thanks to both of you for running for sheriff, and we're going to take a break and come back at 8 for the Public Utility District.